The Kralaxian Empire had taken over 17 star systems in just 10 years. Their best soldiers, the Obsidian Guard, had special implants and the best weapons. They had never lost a fight, until they met Joe Miller. Joe was just a mechanic on Ceres Station, a mining outpost in space. He had fixed things there for 15 years. He fixed air systems, big drills that dug into the asteroid, and everything in between. His hands were rough from work. His clothes always had oil stains, and he always carried his special wrench. He called it Persuader. It was made of strong metal and hung from his belt. The trouble started when all communications stopped working. Then the station's sensors picked up many ships coming fast toward them. "All people, this is not a drill," said Station Director Olivia Ward over the speakers. "Unknown ships coming. Security teams to your spots. All others to safety shelters right now." Joe was deep in the tunnels when he heard the message. He had been fixing a leak in the life support systems. It was a normal job that now didn't matter. As alarm sounded, he grabbed his tools and headed to the nearest shelter. He never got there. The first blast shook the station, throwing Joe against the wall. The second blast made a hole in the station somewhere nearby. He could hear the sound of air escaping. Emergency doors closed around him, sealing off that section. "Attention, humans," a cold, robot-like voice said through the station's speakers. "This place is now under the control of the Kralaxian Empire. Fighting back is useless and will get you killed. Stay where you are for processing." Joe put his ear against the door. On the other side, he heard the sound of armored feet walking. Alien voices talked in sharp clicking sounds. Then he heard screams. His hand gripped his wrench tighter. Joe wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just a mechanic who knew how Ceres Station worked better than anyone else alive. And right now, that made him the most dangerous human in the asteroid belt. "Processing my ass," he said quietly, opening an access panel next to the door. Inside was a manual override that few people knew about. As the sounds of fighting grew louder beyond the door, Joe made a choice that would change human history. He wasn't going to hide. He was going to fight back. The Obsidian Guard moved through Ceres Station like they had done this many times before. Commander Vexthor led the group himself, unusual for what should have been an easy job, but their intelligence team had marked this human outpost as possibly important. Something about the station producing more than expected. Group 3 reports. "The command center is taken," his second-in-command told him. 22 humans captured for processing, 2 killed for fighting back. Vexthor nodded slightly, the movement barely visible in his sleek black armor. "And the engineering section?" "Still searching. The station maps show many maintenance tunnels and access shafts. Progress is slower than expected." "Not acceptable," Vexthor replied. "Send out the hunter drones. I want this station secured within 1 hour." What the Kralaxians didn't know was that Joe Miller was already 3 steps ahead of them. While they moved through the main corridors, Joe moved through the maze of maintenance tunnels and crawl spaces that didn't show up on any official map. Years of fixing problems in the tightest, hardest-to-reach parts of the station had given Joe special knowledge of its secrets. He knew which sections could be cut off, which systems could be rerouted, and most importantly, how everything connected. Joe reached a junction box that controlled air systems for the eastern part. With quick, practiced movements, he rerouted the oxygen scrubbers, creating a no-oxygen zone in the corridor where a group of Kralaxians was moving. Then he bypassed the safety controls on the fire system. When the alien soldiers reached the prepared section, the oxygen level had been reduced to nearly 0. As they turned on their emergency breathing gear, Joe triggered the fire suppressant, not the standard foam, but a special liquid he had modified years ago for dealing with electrical fires in the mining equipment. The liquid sprayed across the squad, coating their advanced armor. Joe held his breath and flipped the final switch, sending electricity through the corridor's lighting system. The electricity found the easiest path, directly through the conductive coating on the Kralaxian armor. 4 elite soldiers went down without firing a shot. Joe didn't waste time celebrating. He slipped into the corridor, took 2 of their weapons, and disappeared back into the maintenance tunnels before the Kralaxians realized what had happened. In the command center, alarms went off on Vexthor's tactical display. "Group 2 is not responding." His second reported. Life signs ended. Vexthor's eyes narrowed behind his face shield. How is this possible? Station security forces were reported as minimal. Unknown, Commander. Systems in that section are not working right. Cameras are offline. Find out what happened, Vexthor ordered, and send 2 more groups to that location. For the first time in his successful military career, Commander Vexthor felt uncertain. Something was wrong here. This was supposed to be a simple capture operation, a step toward the complete takeover of the human solar system. Instead, his elite forces were being taken out by an enemy they couldn't even see. Joe moved quickly through the tunnels he knew so well. The station was his home, and he knew every pipe, panel, and circuit. He had spent years keeping it all running, fixing problems big and small. Now, those same skills would help him fight back. He reached another junction and checked the small tablet he carried. He had connected it to the station's internal sensors, giving him a rough idea of where the aliens were. A group of 5 was moving toward the life support control room, a critical system that Joe couldn't let them take. He set to work, rerouting power lines and preparing another trap. As he worked, he could hear more explosions in distant parts of the station. More screams. His hand shook slightly, but he kept working. Fear wouldn't help anyone now. Come on, Joe, he muttered to himself. Just like fixing the main drill when it seizes up, one step at a time. The station shook again as something big exploded. Emergency lights flickered. Joe finished his work and moved to a small observation port, waiting for the aliens to arrive. They moved with machine-like precision, their black armor making them look like giant insects in the dim emergency lighting. Joe waited until all 5 were in position, then pressed the control pad he had rigged. Panels in the ceiling burst open, dumping coolant fluid onto the aliens. At the same time, the floor, panels electrified. The combination wasn't lethal, but it scrambled their armor systems, leaving them unable to move properly or use their weapons. Joe entered the corridor, wrench in hand. The aliens struggled to aim their weapons, their movements jerky and uncoordinated. You picked the wrong station, Joe said, swinging his wrench at the first alien's helmet. The metal tool connected with a satisfying clang and the alien dropped. This was just the beginning. Joe knew he couldn't beat them all, but he could slow them down. He could show them that humans wouldn't be taken easily. He could buy time for others to escape. And maybe, just maybe, he could send a message to these invaders. Humanity wouldn't go quietly. Not even when faced with the best soldiers of an alien empire. Especially not when humanity had a furious mechanic with a wrench. 6 hours had passed since the aliens attacked Ceres Station. Joe Miller moved through the maintenance tunnels, careful to avoid making noise. He had taken out 7 alien soldiers so far, but there were many more. His wrench had dents in it, now, and his right hand was swollen from the last fight. Joe stopped at a junction and checked his tablet. The aliens had set up their main base in the command center. They were holding most of the station's crew in the mess hall. Guards stood at every entrance. He needed help. One mechanic with a wrench couldn't free all those people alone. Joe crawled through a narrow vent that led toward the storage areas. According to his tablet, there were no alien signals there. Maybe some other crew members had managed to hide. He pushed open a vent cover and dropped down into a dark storage room. The emergency lights cast everything in a dim red glow. "Don't move or I'll shoot," said a voice from the shadows. Joe froze. "I'm human. Joe Miller, station maintenance." A flashlight beam hit his face. Behind it stood Sam Garcia, one of the station's security officers. His uniform was torn, and he had a cut on his forehead. He lowered a small handgun. "Joe, how are you not captured?" "I know the tunnels better than they know their own mothers," Joe said with a small smile. "Are you alone?" Sam shook his head. "Got 2 more with me. Patricia from mining engineering and young Kyle from communications." Patricia Nelson stepped forward. She was tall with short gray hair and hands as calloused as Joe's. "Good to see a friendly face. These aliens killed my whole team when they refused to stop working." Kyle Winters remained in the shadows. He was barely 20, with his communication tech uniform hanging loose on his thin frame. They're scanning everyone they capture, looking for something. Joe nodded. They call it processing. Don't know what they're looking for, but I don't plan to find out. He set his tablet on a crate. I've been mapping their movements. They control the main areas, but they don't know about half the maintenance systems. Patricia leaned over the tablet. What's the plan? We can't hide forever. We need to free the others, Joe said, and take back the station before more aliens arrive. Sam checked his gun. I've got 6 shots left. Won't do much against their armor. Joe smiled and opened his tool bag. Inside were parts from the alien weapons he'd collected. Patricia, you know how to build things. Think you can make something useful from these? Patricia's eyes lit up as she examined the parts. Give me an hour. You've got 30 minutes, Joe replied. Kyle, I need you to hack into the station's systems. Can you do that from here? Kyle nodded nervously. I can access the maintenance subnet. It won't give full control, but I can mess with some systems. Good, Joe said. Sam, tell me everything you know about these aliens. Their tactics, weak points in their armor, anything. As they talked, Joe drew a rough map of the station on the back of an old work order. He marked where the aliens were, where the prisoners were kept, and the systems they needed to control. They're called Kralaxians, Sam explained. I overheard them talking. Their armor is tough, but the joints are weaker. They don't like cold. Their weapons need a few seconds to recharge after firing. Joe nodded. Okay, here's what we do. Kyle will hack the environmental controls. We'll drop the temperature in sections, where the aliens are. Patricia will have weapons ready for us, then we hit them from different directions at once. Patricia looked up from the weapon parts she was connecting. That's not a very detailed plan. Joe shrugged. I'm a mechanic, not a military commander. But I know that when a system fails, it usually fails at the connection points. We find their weak connections and break them. In the command center, Commander Vexthor was growing angry. More of his soldiers had disappeared. Systems kept failing all over the station. The humans were proving more difficult than expected. Status. Report, he demanded. His second-in-command looked nervous. We've lost 12 soldiers. Environmental controls are acting strangely, and the processing of humans is taking longer than expected. Explain, Vexthor said. The genetic scans show unusual patterns. These humans have adaptations to low gravity and radiation. It's confusing our scanners. Vexthor's eyes narrowed. Could this be why intelligence marked this station? Are these humans enhanced? Possibly. Or it could be natural adaptation to space living. Vexthor paced the command center. Double the guards on the prisoners, and prepare the ship's main weapon. If we cannot control this station, we will destroy it. Back in the storage room, Kyle had connected his portable terminal to a maintenance panel. His fingers flew over the keys. I'm in, he said after a few minutes. I can control life support for most sections. What should I do? Joe looked at the map. Start dropping the temperature in these corridors. Make it cold enough to slow them down, but not so cold it triggers their environmental alarms. Kyle nodded and got to work. Patricia had finished modifying 2 alien weapons. I've rewired them to work with our bioelectric fields. They're not as powerful now, but they'll fire for us. Good work, Joe said, taking one of the weapons. It felt wrong in his hand, too smooth and light. He still preferred his wrench. Sam, you take the other one. Sam checked the modified weapon. What's our first target? Joe pointed to a junction on the map. Their patrol routes cross here every 15 minutes. We take out that patrol, then move toward the mess hall. Kyle will stay here and control the systems to help us. Kyle looked relieved that he wouldn't be fighting directly. I can also tap into the communication system. Maybe cause some confusion. Do it, Joe said. Anything that keeps them off balance helps us. They moved through the maintenance tunnels, Joe leading the way. The station felt different now, like a wounded animal. Strange noises echoed through the walls as Kyle adjusted systems remotely. The temperature dropped, their breath forming clouds in the air. They reached a junction above the corridor where the alien patrol would pass. Joe checked his tablet, then held up his hand, showing 5 fingers and counting down. When he reached 0, the panel beneath them opened, and they dropped into the corridor just as 4 Kralaxian soldiers rounded the corner. The aliens reacted, quickly, raising their weapons. But the cold had slowed them down just enough. Patricia threw a small device she had made from spare parts. It hit the floor and exploded in a flash of light, temporarily blinding the aliens. Joe didn't hesitate. He rushed forward, his wrench connecting with the first alien's helmet joint. The alien staggered but didn't fall. Joe hit it again, harder, finding the weak spot between armor plates. Sam fired his modified weapon. It made a strange humming sound, and a blast of energy hit the second alien in the chest. The armor absorbed most of the impact, but the alien still stumbled backward. Patricia had her own weapon, a mining tool she had modified into something like a spear. She drove it into the joint at the third alien's knee, and the soldier collapsed. The fourth alien managed to fire its weapon. The energy blast hit the wall near Joe's head, leaving a scorched mark. Joe rolled forward and came up swinging his wrench at the alien's arm. The weapon fell from the alien's grasp. The fight was brief but brutal. When it ended, all 4 aliens were down, and Joe's team had their weapons and communication devices. "Everyone okay?" Joe asked, breathing hard. Sam had a burn on his arm, but nodded. "I'll live." Patricia was already collecting parts from the alien armor. "We should move. They'll notice these 4 are missing soon." Joe picked up his wrench, now bent from the force of his blows. "Next stop, the mess hall. Time to free our people." As they moved through the corridors, staying in the shadows, Joe knew this was just the beginning. They had won a small victory, but the real fight was still ahead. The aliens still had most of the station, most of the weapons, and a ship in orbit that could destroy them all, but they had something the aliens didn't expect: human ingenuity and a refusal to give up. And sometimes that was enough to change everything. Joe and his small team moved quietly toward the mess hall. They had defeated 1 patrol of aliens, but there were many more. According to Sam, over 100 station workers were being held in the mess hall. Guards stood at every entrance. "Kyle, are you there?" Joe whispered into the small radio they had made from parts. "I'm here." Kyle's voice came back, slightly muffled. "I can see through some of the security cameras. There are 8 guards outside the mess hall and 4 inside." Joe looked at Sam and Patricia. "Too many to fight head-on." Patricia nodded. "We need a distraction." Joe thought for a moment, then smiled. "Kyle, can you access the fire systems for the mess hall?" "Yes, but I can't trigger them directly. The aliens have locked those controls." "You don't need to trigger them," Joe said. "Just open the maintenance access to the sprinkler pipes above the mess hall." Kyle was quiet for a moment. "Done. Panel B47 should be unlocked now." Joe turned to Patricia. "You still have those mining charges?" Patricia patted her pocket. 3 small ones. Not enough to damage the hull, but enough for what you're thinking." "Good. Sam, you stay in the main corridor. When the guards run out, you hit them from behind. Patricia and I will go through the ceiling." They split up, with Sam taking position near the main entrance to the mess hall. Joe and Patricia crawled through the maintenance tunnels until they reached the panel Kyle had unlocked. Below them was the sprinkler system that ran above the entire mess hall. Patricia carefully placed her 3 small charges on the water pipes. Set for 30 seconds, they moved back a safe distance. When the charges went off, the sound was muffled, but the effect was immediate. Water poured through the broken pipes, raining down on everyone in the mess hall below. The human prisoners shouted in surprise. The alien guards looked up, confused by the sudden shower. That's when Joe and Patricia made their move. They pushed, opened the ceiling panels, and dropped down into the mess hall, landing on tables. The wet floor made the aliens slip as they tried to react. Joe swung his wrench at the nearest guard, hitting it in the face mask. Patricia used her modified mining tool to take down another. Outside, the commotion drew the attention of the guards. Just as Joe had planned, they rushed into the mess hall to help. Sam was waiting in the corridor. He fired the modified alien weapon at the guards from behind, taking down 3 before they knew what was happening. The prisoners, seeing their chance, joined the fight. Even without weapons, 100 angry humans overwhelmed the remaining guards by sheer numbers. When it was over, all 12 Kralaxian guards were down. The humans had suffered injuries, but no one was killed. Joe climbed on a table to address. "Everyone, listen up. We've freed you, but we're still in danger. The aliens control most of the station, and they have a ship that can destroy us all. We need to move quickly." Olivia Ward, the station director, stepped forward. Her uniform was torn, and she had a cut on her cheek. "What's the plan, Miller?" Joe pointed to the fallen guards. "First, collect their weapons and communication devices. Anyone with engineering or technical skills, come with me. We need to take back the station's systems. Everyone else, follow Director Ward to the emergency shelters." A man pushed through the crowd. It was Dr. Frank Lewis, the station's medical officer. "I've got injured people here. They need treatment." "Go with them to the shelters," Joe said. "There's medical supplies there." As the crowd organized itself, Joe gathered a team of 20 engineers and technicians. Patricia and Sam stayed with him. "Kyle," Joe called through the radio. "What's happening in the command center?" Kyle's voice came back, tense with excitement. "They know something's wrong. The commander is sending soldiers to the mess hall. You have maybe 5 minutes." Joe nodded to his team. "We need to split up. Patricia, take 5 people and secure the power distribution center. Sam, take another 5 and hold the junction at Section C. The rest come with me to environmental control." As they moved out, alarms blared throughout the station. The Kralaxians were no longer trying to be subtle. Joe knew they were running out of time. In the command center, Commander Vexthor watched the tactical display with growing anger. The red dots representing his soldiers were disappearing one by one. "How is this happening?" he demanded. "They're just miners and engineers." His second-in-command looked nervous. "The humans seem to know the station's systems better than we do. They're using maintenance areas we didn't even know existed." Vexthor slammed his fist on the console. "Seal off all maintenance access points and prepare the main cannon. If we can't take this station, no one will have it." Joe's group reached the Environmental Control Center without resistance. The aliens had overlooked this area, focusing on more obvious targets like the command center. "Start locking down sections," Joe told his team. "Vent the atmosphere in areas with heavy alien presence. Increase oxygen in areas we control." One of the engineers looked up in alarm. "Joe, I'm picking up energy readings from the alien ship. They're charging weapons." Joe's face hardened. "They're going to destroy the station." He grabbed his radio. "Kyle, are you still in the computer system?" "Yes, but they're locking me out. I've got maybe 10 minutes before I lose access. Can you send a message to the mining ships in the outer belt? We need help." Kyle's voice was doubtful. "I can try, but even if they get it, they're hours away." Joe thought quickly. "Patricia, how's it going at power distribution?" Patricia's voice came through, the sound of fighting in the background. "We've secured it, but we're taking fire. Can't hold for long." "Reroute all power to the station's shields," Joe ordered. "And prepare for emergency evacuation." Joe turned to his team. "We need to get to the shuttle bay. That's our only chance now." They rushed through the corridors, avoiding alien patrols. When they reached the shuttle bay, they found Sam already there with a group of survivors. "Got here just in time," Sam said. 5 shuttles ready to go. Not enough for everyone, but we can fit the children and essential personnel." Joe nodded grimly. "Start loading people. Priority to children, medical staff, and key engineers." As people began boarding the shuttles, the station shook violently. The alien ship had fired a warning shot. "How many can we save?" Joe asked, looking at the crowded bay. Sam checked his tablet. "Maybe 300, that leaves 100 still on the station." Joe looked around at the frightened faces. Some would have to stay behind. Someone would have to keep the shields up as long as possible to give the shuttles time to escape. He gripped his wrench tighter. "Get them on board. I'll hold the control room and keep the shields up." Patricia grabbed his arm. "That's suicide, Joe." Joe smiled sadly. "Someone has to buy time. Might as well be the guy who knows how to keep things running the longest." Sam and Patricia looked at each other, then back at Joe. They knew he was right, but that didn't make it easier. Joe handed his wrench to Patricia. "Keep this. Might come in handy where you're going." Patricia pushed it back to him. "You'll need it more. Besides, I expect you to return it when this is over." Joe nodded, though they both knew the odds. He turned to address the crowd. "Listen up. We don't have much time. The shuttles leave in 5 minutes. Those staying behind, we'll hold the shields, as long as we can." As people rushed to board the shuttles, Joe turned away. He had a station to defend and shields to maintain. The fight wasn't over yet. Joe ran through the corridors toward the shield control room. Behind him, the station shook as another blast from the alien ship hit the outer defenses. The shields were holding for now, but they wouldn't last long. "Kyle, are you still there?" Joe spoke into his radio. "I'm here," Kyle answered. "I'm in the computer room. The aliens are trying to break in." "Lock the door and get to the shuttles," Joe ordered. "They leave in 4 minutes." "What about you?" "I'll hold the shields up as long as I can. Just go." Joe reached the shield control room and locked the door behind him. The room was filled with humming equipment. Screens showed the status of the station's shields. They were at 60% and dropping. Joe's hands moved quickly over the controls. He rerouted power from non-essential systems to boost the shields. Lights dimmed throughout the station as he directed every bit of energy to the defenses. His radio crackled. "Joe, it's Sam. First shuttle is away. 4 more to go." "Keep them coming," Joe replied. "I'll give you the time you need." Joe checked the screens again. The alien ship was moving into position for another attack. The station's sensors showed 20 alien soldiers heading toward his position. He didn't have much time. In the command center, Commander Vexthor watched with growing frustration as the first human shuttle escaped the station. "Destroy that shuttle," he ordered. His weapons officer tried to target the small craft, but the station's shields were blocking their sensors. "Unable to get a lock," the officer reported. "The shields are interfering with our targeting systems." Vexthor slammed his fist down. "Then destroy the whole station. Full power to the main cannon." The massive alien ship turned, its main weapon glowing with energy as it prepared to fire. On the station, Joe saw the power build up on his screens. "Sam, they're charging their main weapon," Joe warned. "How many shuttles are away?" 3 gone. 2 more loading now." Sam's voice came back, strained. "We need 5 more minutes." Joe looked at his controls. The shields wouldn't last 5 more minutes under a full assault. He needed to do something else, something the aliens wouldn't expect. Joe's eyes fell on the station's power core schematic. It was dangerous, maybe suicidal, but it might work. "Sam, tell the last shuttles to launch as soon as they can. Don't wait the full 5 minutes." "What are you going to do?" Joe didn't answer. He was already working on the power systems, making adjustments that went against every safety protocol he had ever learned. The door to the control room shuddered as something hit it from the outside. The aliens were trying to break in. Joe worked faster. He connected the shield generators directly to the station's main reactor, bypassing all safety systems. The shield suddenly strengthened, jumping to 80%, but warning lights flashed across every screen. The reactor was overheating. At this rate, it would go critical in minutes. The door buckled as another blow struck it. Joe grabbed his wrench and wedged it against the door controls, jamming the mechanism. It wouldn't hold for long, but he only needed a few more minutes. "Joe," Patricia's voice came through the radio. "All shuttles are loaded. We're ready to go." "Launch now," Joe ordered. "Get clear of the station." "What about you?" Joe looked at the reactor readings. "I've got one more trick to play. Now go." The last 2 shuttles detached from the station and accelerated away. The alien ship tried to target them, but the strengthened shields still blocked their sensors. Vexthor watched in disbelief as the last human shuttles escaped. "Fire the main cannon. Destroy that station now." The alien ship's main weapon discharged, sending a massive energy beam towards Ceres Station. The beam hit the shields, which flared bright, but held. In the control room, Joe watched as the reactor temperature climbed into the red zone. The door behind him finally gave way and 3 alien soldiers burst in. Joe turned to face them empty-handed. His wrench was still jammed in the door controls. "You're too late," he told them, though he knew they couldn't understand him. "The reactor's going critical. This whole station is about to become a very big message to your empire. The lead alien raised its weapon, but then stopped as alarms blared throughout the station. Even they could understand what those warnings meant. Commander Vexthor received the urgent message from his soldiers. Reactor overload imminent. Station will detonate in approximately 2 minutes. For the first time, Vexthor felt fear. All forces return to the ship immediately. Prepare for emergency departure. The aliens in the control room backed away from Joe and ran. They knew they couldn't stop what was happening now. Joe smiled grimly as they fled. He checked the screens one last time. The shuttles were getting farther away, but they weren't at a safe distance yet. He needed to buy them more time. Joe went to the door and retrieved his wrench. It was bent from being used to jam the door, but it was still his trusted tool. He made his way to the emergency control room, where manual overrides could still be accessed. There, he found a surprise. Kyle was waiting for him. "I thought I told you to get to the shuttles," Joe said. Kyle shrugged. Someone needed to keep the computer systems running. The last shuttle was full anyway. Joe shook his head but didn't argue. "The reactor's going to blow. We need to delay it just a little longer to give the shuttles time to reach safe distance." Together they worked on the coolant systems, manually venting heat from the reactor. It wouldn't prevent the explosion, but it might delay it by a minute or two. Outside the station, the alien ship was moving away, trying to reach a safe distance. The shuttles continued to accelerate, carrying the survivors toward the safety of the outer asteroid belt. On the station, warning signals showed the reactor had reached critical mass. Nothing could stop the chain reaction now. "That's it," Joe said, setting down his wrench. "We've done all we can." Kyle nodded, his young face surprisingly calm. "Do you think it made a difference? What we did here?" Joe looked at his bent wrench, thinking about everything that had happened since the aliens arrived. "Yeah, kid, I think it did. The Empire sent their best soldiers, and a bunch of miners and engineers fought them off. That's going to make them think twice next time." The room began to shake as systems failed throughout the station. Joe picked up his wrench one last time. "The Empire's going to remember this day," he said. "They'll remember that humans don't go down without a fight." In the last moments before the station exploded, Joe thought about the shuttles carrying his friends to safety. He thought about Earth, still safe and unaware of the danger that had come to their solar system. And he thought about his wrench, the simple tool that had become a symbol of humanity's resistance. Then, with a final, catastrophic surge of energy, Ceres Station erupted in a blinding flash of light. The explosion was visible throughout the asteroid belt, a brilliant star marking humanity's first defiance against the Kralaxian Empire. The 5 shuttles from Ceres Station raced through the darkness of space. Behind them, a bright flash lit up the asteroid belt as the station exploded. The people on the shuttles watched in silence, many with tears in their eyes. They had escaped, but at a terrible cost. Patricia Nelson stood at the viewport of the lead shuttle, clutching the railing with white knuckles. "He did it," she whispered. "That stubborn fool actually did it." Sam Garcia joined her, his face grim. "Joe bought us the time we needed, him and Kyle both." Director Olivia Ward approached them. "What's our situation?" Sam turned to her. "All 5 shuttles made it away. We have fuel for about 3 days at current speed. The alien ship was caught in the edge of the blast. It's damaged, but still operational." "Are they following us?" Sam checked the sensors. "Not yet. They're still recovering from the explosion, but they will." Olivia nodded. "Set course for Mars colony. We need to warn Earth about what happened." On the Kralaxian command ship, alarms blared as damage control teams rushed to repair systems. The explosion had caught them too close, overloading shields and damaging one engine. Commander Vexthor stood on the bridge, his armor scorched and dented. He had survived, but many of his soldiers had not. "Damage report," he demanded. His second-in-command, looking shaken, reported, "Main drive at 40%, weapons systems offline, communications damaged but functional. We lost 37 soldiers on the station and 12 more from the explosion." Vexthor stared at the debris field that had once been Ceres Station. One single human mechanic did this to us." "Sir, we've detected the human shuttles. They're heading toward Mars." Should we pursue? Vexthor considered this. His ship was damaged, his forces reduced. The mission that should have been a simple conquest had turned into a disaster. No, he finally said. We return to the fleet. The Empire must know what happened here. But sir, our orders were to secure this system. Vexthor turned to him, eyes cold. The humans destroyed themselves rather than be conquered. They sacrificed their own people to defeat us. The Empire must understand what kind of enemy we face. As the alien ship turned away, the human shuttles continued toward Mars. In the lead shuttle, Patricia sat alone, looking at the stars. In her hands was a small piece of metal, a bolt from Joe's wrench that he had given her as a good luck charm days before the attack. We'll remember you, Joe, she said softly, and we'll be ready next time. 3 weeks later, on Earth, the highest military and government officials gathered in an underground bunker. The survivors from Ceres Station had reached Mars Colony and sent their warning to Earth. Now humanity was preparing for war. General Alan Hayes paced in front of the assembled leaders. The aliens call themselves the Kralaxian Empire. According to the Ceres survivors, they've conquered 17 star systems before reaching ours. Their technology is advanced, but not unbeatable. How can we fight them? Asked the president. We have no space fleet, no weapons that can match theirs. A woman stepped forward. It was Patricia Nelson, now wearing an Earth Defense Force uniform. We don't need to match them. We just need to make the cost too high for them to continue. She placed something on the table, a bent bolt from Joe's wrench. This belonged to the man who stopped them at Ceres. He wasn't a soldier. He was a mechanic who knew his systems and used that knowledge to fight back. General Hayes nodded. Ms. Nelson has a point. The Kralaxians rely on their advanced technology and training, but they don't adapt well to unexpected situations. They follow protocols. They expect enemies to act in predictable ways. So what do you suggest? Asked the president. We use what we have, Patricia said. Our mining ships, our maintenance crews, our engineers. We turn our tools into weapons. We make the asteroid belt a trap for their ships. Sam Garcia, also now in uniform, added, and we learn from Joe Miller. He showed us that sometimes the simplest tools, used with knowledge and determination, can defeat the most advanced enemy. The president looked unconvinced. You're suggesting we fight a space empire with mechanics and mining tools? Patricia smiled grimly. The Empire deployed elite soldiers. Humanity replied with one furious mechanic and a wrench, and he won. 6 months later, the Kralaxian fleet entered the solar system. 50 warships, thousands of soldiers, all prepared for a full invasion. They expected resistance from military forces. They expected weapons and warships. What they found instead was chaos. Mining charges hidden in asteroids, solar reflectors blinding their sensors, maintenance drones reprogrammed to attach to their ships and cut through hulls, and everywhere, humans who refused to follow the rules of conventional warfare. On the lead Kralaxian ship, Fleet Commander Draxel received reports of mounting losses with growing concern. How is this possible? They have no fleet, no proper weapons. His tactical officer looked bewildered. They're using mining equipment as weapons. They've hidden explosives throughout the asteroid belt. Every piece of their infrastructure has been turned against us. In his quarters, Commander Vexthor, now an advisor to the fleet, was not surprised. He had tried to warn them, but the Empire's leaders hadn't listened. They couldn't understand what he had learned at Ceres Station. Humans didn't fight like other species. They didn't follow military doctrine. When faced with a superior force, they didn't surrender. They innovated. They used what they had. They found weaknesses and exploited them without mercy. On Earth, Patricia stood in the command center watching the battle unfold on the screens. The Kralaxians were losing ships faster than expected. Their perfect formations were breaking down as they tried to adapt to the unconventional tactics. Joe would be proud, Sam said, standing beside her. Patricia nodded, touching the bolt she now wore on a chain around her neck. This is just the beginning. The Kralaxians thought they could take our system because they had better technology and training. But that's not what matters in the end. What matters asked a young officer nearby. Patricia looked at the screens where another alien ship was retreating, damaged by what had once been simple mining equipment. Heart, she said. Determination. The willingness to use whatever tools you have, however simple, to protect what's yours. Joe showed us that. One person can make a difference even with nothing but a wrench and the knowledge of how to use it. As the Kralaxian fleet began to withdraw from the solar system, the message spread throughout human colonies. The Empire had been beaten back, not by advanced weapons or military might, but by human ingenuity and determination. In time, humanity would build proper defenses. They would develop new technologies and train soldiers, but they would never forget the lesson of Ceres Station, that in the face of overwhelming force, sometimes the most powerful weapon is a person who refuses to give up, armed with nothing but determination and the simplest of tools. The Empire had deployed elite soldiers. Humanity had replied with mechanics, miners, and engineers armed with the tools of their trades. And in doing so, they had written the first chapter in what would become humanity's unexpected rise among the stars.